Hope it was positive. I'm, I'm Suzanne. This is a drawing that I did like a year ago. So it's actually on photography backdrop paper. When you're drawing on paper, the only thing you really need to think about is whether or not it's acid-free. If it has acid in it, then over time it'll erode the image. But if it's acid-free, then it's archival. So something that I've noticed is that when you get paper at art stores, it's extremely expensive. So it's cool to, kind of search around on Google finding cheaper solutions to acid-free paper. So this roll was 10 feet wide, acid-free. It cost me probably a tenth of what paper that big would cost at an art supply store. So just something for you guys to know. I studied drawing at the Cleveland Institute of Art in Cleveland, Ohio. So I graduated in 2016. I originally studied illustration, and then I transferred into fine art about halfway through the 4-year program. But I always, in a lot of ways, stayed an illustrator. I worked with illustration tools. I just used them at a much larger scale than illustrators do. So in illustration, everything is for reproduction. You do an image and it gets scanned in, and then it gets put on a billboard or it gets put in a newspaper, whatever. I was really interested in the tactile quality of things. I think at the time I didn't really realize that's what it was, but I like the physicality of an object, even if it's in 2 dimensions. So I was doing a lot of colored pencil drawings. This is one of the drawings that I did in Cleveland. And here is a photo of it in progress. So you can see all of the colored pencils up at the top. I also used Copic marker, which is another really popular illustrator tool. But because I was doing these really large scale drawings, and that was a pretty unique thing, Copic sponsored me. So I would do these tutorial videos in exchange for, I think they paid me some money, but they mostly just paid me in markers. But I was young, and that seemed like enough at the time. But you can see up in the upper left-hand corner that numeric system. All of the colors are numerically coded, and the glass that I use now is also coded numerically. And I actually kind of layer the color in a very similar way that I did with these markers. So I really do think that the way that I used these markers was the foundation for what I do in glass. Again, really getting into my interest in object and material. Cleveland Institute of Art was close to Case Western Reserve University, which is has an engineering program that's fairly robust, and they had a fabrication lab that I just thought was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I got really into laser cutting, so I would laser cut my designs out of different materials, in this case plywood, and then I started to draw on top of the wood, and still working in 2 dimensions, but starting to kind of come out of the canvas or panel in different ways. So towards the end of my senior year, my 4th year, I wanted to work in 3 dimensions. I had done a little bit of sculpture in high school. We had a ceramic kiln at my high school, so it's like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And I just got a couple bricks of clay and asked the ceramics department if they would fire this thing, and they were like, sure, yeah. And his name is Randy the Dandelion Lion. He's a lion, but his head is a dandelion. I could go deeper, but I choose not to. I was gonna make this dandelion seed head, and one of my friends suggested I make it out of glass. She was like, yeah, I'm taking this glass elective. You could probably flame work these dandelion seeds. And I was like, okay, cool. So I went in there and I showed them a sketch probably, and someone taught me how to make them. It taught me how to, pull stringers and flame work them. And so for like a month or so, I made so many of those. And I was in the glassblowing studio all the time because I was making these for this. And for whatever reason, I really liked it in there. And I think maybe a part of the reason was just because my dad was a professional drag racer. So he was a race car driver, and then he also built his cars. And I grew up in machine shops and car shops. And the contemporary art world is about the farthest thing from that that you can possibly get. And I think, like, yeah, going into the glassblowing studio, it just felt like home to me. You know, it was really familiar. So I think that's probably why I kept gravitating towards that space, even though what I do is so different from what most of my friends do, you know, in the hot shop. So yeah, I was introduced to Bullseye. Someone at the school had a sponsorship with Bullseye, so they had a lot of powder, and they're like, you know, people are starting to draw with this. There was a little Bullseye video way before they had their huge, like, online video library that they had now. They had a few videos up on their website, and there was one where, you know, they got a bunch of painters and various artists, and they gave them a bunch of black powder. And it was really abstract, but they would dump a bunch of black powder onto the sheet glass and kind of move it around and make drawings. And I was like, oh, okay. And I just graduated. I didn't really have much going on. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll mess around with it. And this was one of the first things that I made. So I just really kind of took to the powder. I understood the color system. I understood how it layered. Again, I think in part because it was similar to what I was doing with the markers. And for those of you who aren't in my class or aren't familiar with the process, I, you know, use crushed up glass powder, and I pick it up in little sifters with mesh. So it's just little plastic cups with mesh at the bottom. I sift it down onto sheet glass, and then I just push it around. Like when I made this video, I don't even remember where I was, but wherever I was, I didn't have most of my tools, and I can tell because I'm using like an eraser to push around a lot of the powder. It's funny because part of this process, you know, the glass, the kiln, such specialized stuff, you know. But then in terms of like what I use to actually make the drawing, it could be anything, like the cheapest brush you can find, and like you're just it's like pushing around salt on a kitchen table, you know, so you can do it with anything. And I like that about it in comparison to, what's the word? I guess just how difficult it can be to get the glass and the materials and things like that. This is just kind of an aerial view of the same process. So Bullseye makes lots of colors. They make more colors than this. This slide is kind of just a prompt for me, so I could start talking about color. But what I did is I just started making my own mixes. So I would take the colors that they had, and I would do ratios, like 2 parts this color to 1 part this color to 5 parts this color. And I would notate all of that, and I would put little labels up in the corner. So these are the color samples that I started to make. So I'm developing a really massive palette of pre-mixed colors, which for me as a realism artist, that's what you need. You know, you can build up on the canvas or on the glass, or you can build up on your palette and then add it. So for me, when I was learning how to use this material, it made sense to be like, okay, like what is possible? Like, is there a limit to what color I can get? I'd say the only limit is like a really, really cool red. You can't really get that because there's sulfur in the reds, and that's an orange base. But other than that, I can pretty much get like every color imaginable. So I was like, okay, bet, like, let's go. I don't know how to go back. I did it. So here you can see an example of just like some of these colors look very, very similar, but to me it's really important that I could differentiate, right? Because realism is all about like being able to tweak just like the tiniest little bit, just like half a click, half a click, half a click when you're changing color. And yeah, glass lets me do everything I need to. So this is one of the early pieces that I made in 2016. And here's a close-up view and then a view of me assembling it in this massive bell kiln that I was lucky enough to have access to at the time. So there's many layers. There's actually 7 layers of glass in this piece. So when you walk past it, everything kind of shifts because different parts of the figure are on different sheets of the glass. So it shifts around. And here you can see me kind of setting it up. Everything was, you know, these pieces, these early pieces were my glass education because I didn't go to school for glass. So I probably spent 5 times as long on these as I would spend on them now, mostly just breaking them and fixing them, messing them up and repairing them. You know, so much time in the cold shop grinding off mistakes. But that's how I learned how to do it. And even if I did go to school for glass, I don't think anyone would have taught me this, so it doesn't really matter. I also had, I still had access to that fabrication lab even after I graduated, and they have a very nice water jet cutter. It's really rare that a community fabrication lab would have a water jet cutter at all, let alone a $100,000 OMAX. So I was extremely lucky to not only learn how to operate that, but have like total unlimited access to it whenever I wanted. It's really unheard of outside of the Think Box in Cleveland, Ohio. But I started cutting things out, and here I'm working on this piece that I made of a salmon run. And here it is installed. And another early water jet cut figurative piece that I sold this year, man. Thank you. 10 years later. And here you can see, so here's me working on it with some powder on the far left. Light table off, exact same thing, but with the light table turned on in the middle. So as my students know, with this process, a light table having backlit light while you're working makes a really huge difference. But even then, like the color before you fire it, it looks very, very different than what it looks like after you fire it. So you're really dependent on the samples that you've made, similar to when you're doing ceramics and you're looking at your little glaze samples. It's very similar to that. And then you're also dependent on any notes that you make. So there's a lot of planning involved. And then on the far right is just mid-process working on that torso. So I think it was probably 2017. I was full on in glass at that point. Like I didn't really expect to be. The Cleveland Institute of Art had a big faculty turnover in their glass department, and I ended up teaching adjunct, like an elective, having only worked with glass for about a year. So I'd say, you know, if those 3 pieces, those 3 big early pieces that I made were half of my education, the other half of my education was having to be adjunct faculty at a college. So because I didn't just want to do powder drawing, I wanted to do like a whole like kind of class on every way you could put an image on glass. So every week before I taught, I would learn a new method and then I would teach it. So yeah, by the end of that, I was pretty good knowledge-wise, but I was extremely burnt out. Little did I know, foreshadowing. But anyway, so I was like, okay, I guess I'm a glass artist. I moved to Whidbey Island, which is off the coast of Seattle. Seattle, as a lot of you probably know, is like definitely the hub if you're young and you want to work for glass blowers or people in the studio glass movement. You have your best shot in Seattle, Washington. And I had some friends that lived on an island off of the coast of Seattle. It was really great. I could still work over town if I wanted to. So that's what I did. I had a fabrication studio. And then I was also fairly full-time working for a glass blower named Nancy Callan. but this is some of the work I was doing on my fabrication studio, learning a lot, doing anything I needed to get an image onto glass however I could. Sometimes it was screen printed, sometimes it was airbrushed, sometimes I would cut vinyl and use that, sometimes it would be done by hand. I built a screen printing studio in my guest bathroom of my house. It works, man. It's actually like insanely affordable to build a screen printing studio. I mean, like my entire setup probably cost me $20. Oh, but I did get a power washer. How much are those? Like $80? $100. So this is, I don't think anybody really cares about this slide but me, but I will tell you that airbrushing vitreous enamel multicolor with a fade like this is probably my biggest feat of my career, and nobody cares, but this was so freaking hard to do, and I did it, man. That's my spray booth that I built. We're professionals. Okay. So during that entire time, I also taught. As like I mentioned before, I was teaching right after I graduated. I did some college. I've worked at a lot of nonprofits. And then the majority of my career has been traveling workshops, like what I'm doing right now. So I've really been doing that now for 10 years. It feels kind of strange to say it. Mostly glass, but I also do figurative sculpture, like some of those images there, and then sometimes I'll do figure painting and figure drawing. And all of those, we usually have a live model in the center of the class. I really like teaching those because it's expensive to hire a live model, and if I'm teaching the class, then it's free. So, yeah. I didn't really make a lot of work during that time. I'd say, 6-7 years, I didn't really make many things because all of that work that I just described was really time consuming. And I also didn't know how to price myself and was working for like way under budget, but that's another slideshow. I did make this series, these masks. It was my effort to make a production series, which is hilarious. But all of my friends were production glassblowers, and I was like, yeah, I'll make multiples of a thing. It's like, no, Suzanne, it's literally impossible for you to make something that takes less than 3 weeks, like there's no way. But I got these down to like a week, and I'll show you, I had multiples on a desk and I was like doing them all at the same time, but it's not my thing. Like I'm not meant to do production. But I do really like how these came out. Here's another one. And then there you go. Here I'm only trying to do 2 at once. But you can see these little cups are my mixes, like the little mixes that I made with multiple powders. I put them in these little cups. Then up there is the palette that I'm currently using to work on these little deer heads. And again, lots of notes. So every time I would fire it, I would write down these are mixes, right? So 2 parts 1128, 1 part 1109, 3 parts 1129. It's a gray, apparently. And then I would, put circle where every color would go, and that's every time I fire the piece. I would usually do Procreate, a digital drawing of exactly what it's going to look like, and then I would also have a reference photo of, in this case, a rabbit. And then I would cut it out. So I didn't have a water jet cutter anymore, so I just have my Taurus 2 ring saw. Poor little guy. He's been through a lot with me. Many blades have been broken. And then, and then I would just finish it up with a little grinder. And then I would slump them. So, yeah, the nice thing, my dad is still a race car guy, so every once in a while I call him up for like a mold or something. It's like a little stainless curve thing. It's really interesting trying to describe what I want to like car machinists. They're like, you want what? I'm like, just like a curve, dude. Just send it. It's fine. For what? Don't worry about it. Yeah, and then I was still living out in Washington, so me and my friends had really a lot of fun one day in Port Townsend, which is in on the peninsula of Washington State. If you're ever out there, Port Townsend's my favorite place up there. Yeah, so glass was going well. I had a lot of work in my fabrication shop. The pieces I was making were doing well in the glass world. But, you know, I went to school for drawing and painting, and I didn't really expect this glass stuff. And I didn't have any friends that were image makers. Like, all of my friends were glass blowers, which was cool. But I guess I just felt like, I don't know, like life had like jumped ahead of me. Like I was like, what happened, you know? And I kind of just needed a little bit of time to figure out where I was. So I kind of just went back to doing really simple drawings. This is, I think, pencil and watercolor. And no, it's pencil and acrylic, but it's really watered down acrylic, so we'll say watercolor. And this one was kind of about, it's called Karma, but it's kind of about like not being sure of what was directing my path forward, having things kind of dragging me down, carrying things, some of them good, some of them bad, you know, just like a lot of mixed emotions. This one's called Matcha, just because the color, I think. This one's not very deep. This one's called Self, so like picking up and putting down masks. I kept having this image in my head of like someone stepping on stones in the water, because on Whidbey Island there was a lot of like flat water. And I kept imagining them like putting down a stone and stepping on it and like picking it up. But they were also masks, and it was also in this like continuous loop that never ended. So that's what this was. So I'm trying to figure out the timeline of this. I'd say, you know, my life in Washington State kind of merged into this extremely nomadic lifestyle. I had this little van. I just had the van anyway because I needed a truck, but I kind of realized I could sleep in it, and I really liked that. I was like, that's cool. And then like my friend turned me on to this app that's called Campendium. That's like a crowdsourced app for camping sites, for free camping. And people would review it like, it's totally safe here, no one's gonna bother you, like blah, blah, blah. And then I just realized, I was like, wow, it's like insanely affordable to just drive around the country. And I was teaching a lot of workshops. I also was working a lot of, I was designing websites for artists. I was editing photos for artists. I was doing a lot of stuff remote. And so I just started driving around, like going to different places, and like loved it. And that became like a huge part of my lifestyle for years. And I really enjoyed it. I'm really grateful for that time that I spent doing that. This is all sheet glass, and then this is my bed. It was a residency, and my buddies have a shop in Monterey, California. And so they just let me pull in the van into the hot shop at night, and that was where I slept. And then I would pull it out during the day and make stuff. It's the best. I also, when I was doing all that traveling, I started painting more murals because, again, it was conducive to that lifestyle. Like, a lot of muralists are always on the road. So my first one was with my friends in Carlsbad, California. They own a hot shop called Barrio, and they were just about to build it. And I called Mary. I was like, Mary, you gotta let me paint a mural. She's like, have you ever done one before? I'm like, no. She's like, okay, let's do it. I'm like, yes. And this was the first mural that I painted. It took me so long, but she let me stay with her forever. She actually kind of kicked me out. It was like, like I had been there for like 6 weeks, and she's like, so, when do you think you're, I'm like, I'm gonna leave, like just like 5 more days, I'll leave. It was just like, it was just like I was on the coast of California, like how could I leave? This one on the left is actually in the Caribbean. That's kind of a long story. And then the one on the right is in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio. And then this one is in Brooklyn, where I now live. So I was working in Washington, traveling a lot, just never grounded, didn't really have a place, really, really tired of fabricating glass, really exhausted. I was getting to a point where I would get sick to my stomach when I would go into my shop. So things needed to change. And I was visiting New York with some friends one day, and I was in Chinatown. I remember the moment. I was like standing in Chinatown and nothing made sense. And I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely moving here for sure. And so, I just kind of waited for an opportunity. I had friends in Philly, and I would stay in Philly, and I would take the bus up to New York just for the day. And I applied to work at Urban Glass and told them I lived in New York, but I didn't. And I got and I got the job, but it was like really rare. Like it was just filling in shifts at the gallery. So like a couple times a month I would just like take the bus to New York, and I was just waiting for an affordable apartment to happen. And then a girl that worked at Urban Glass was like, hey, I heard you were looking for places. This room opened up like really, really deep in Brooklyn. I mean, it was like an hour and a half to get into Manhattan, but it was $500 a month cash under the table. And that is unheard of in the city. So that's how I got to New York. And then I started working as a technician at this fabrication lab called Makerspace NYC. And this is the mural that I did for them. So when I had that little room in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, I did a little series of paintings in my bedroom. This is one of them. This is another. This is the third one. So getting very cartoony, you know, I think the burnout of my work life, and then also having been a realism artist my whole life, I just really needed something free and colorful. Like I just really needed to kind of have fun. This is actually a digital drawing because I teach digital painting sometimes online. I decided when I moved to New York, because I had a fabrication shop in Washington. I had everything you would need to make the work that I make. I sold it all. And I decided that I would limit my glass making to residencies and teaching. But I decided that that was good because I'm an extremely extroverted person. And I was like, it'll be good. It'll force me to have to apply to things. It'll, you know, get me out there. I'll meet a lot of people that way. And so far, that's exactly what's been happening. So I don't make a lot of glass, but I do make a few things a year if I have a residency. So this is one I made at Pilchuck last year. And this is a functional clock. I've been wanting to make this clock for years, but I made it at a residency in Massachusetts. I made this one there too. Other than that, I've just been taking drawing and painting commissions. So this was a drawing commission that I had last year. She just wanted something with a bear and a girl. So it's really, it's really cool when I get a loose commission because I can just turn it into something that interests me. And at the time, like I really felt like I was like hanging on by a thread. I mean, when I moved to New York, like I didn't know anybody. And I was so depressed for a while because there's no nature there. Like it's so different than anything I had experienced before. And so I was like, I know I can do it. I just got to keep going. Like, and so this piece was kind of about that. Like, it's a self-portrait of me. And I always think of like, I'm like, there's this bear behind me. I think I had just watched that movie with Leo DiCaprio. What's that? Whatever that one's called. So I'm Leo, but my story is different because I don't get all screwed up by the bear. I beat the bear, and I have this thing. I have this thing in my hand, and I'm like, I got something up my sleeve. Like, I'm gonna be okay. That's what this piece was about. But since then, things have started to get a lot better for me. I have a really great studio now in Bushwick, Brooklyn, that I live in, and I'm painting in a way that really excites me. So this is a commission. The next one I'm going to show is also a commission, and I'm really excited to do more like large-scale paintings like this. So it's actually acrylic, but I water it way down, and then I prep the raw canvas in a way that it takes the paint really well. So it doesn't really act like acrylic, but it is. It is acrylic paint. Yes. And this is and then this is the first time I've done it this way, but I work on the canvas unstretched, which is really nice because, again, so affordable. Like a roll of canvas is very, very cheap. Like, and I'll just like roll out a bunch of it, tack it to my wall, paint whatever, and then you can just build a stretcher and stretch it at the end. So I'm really happy with the way that I'm making these pieces. I can't wait to make more when I get home. This is the other one I'm working on. This is actually my friend Adrienne. She's a horse trainer in Oklahoma, certified badass. Baby. This is okay, so how much time? What time? Oh, 6:45. Okay, cool. So yeah, I have this slide here that says pause for questions. And that means it's time to pause for questions. The only thing I have after this is probably like 5 minutes of a more in-depth powder drawing process explanation. But I feel like I just threw a lot of information at you, and I also wasn't sure how long that was going to take. So I think now's a good time for questions, and if we have that extra 5 at the end, we can do the process info. Yeah? It's redundant for all of my students, but I mean, you guys are what I'm here for anyway. I already talked to them. Yes.
What types of a realist artist?
Realism, because I
I don't read it. I don't know enough about art, but I don't read it as that way.
Oh, we should debate. Because to me this looks real.
That's the one that is, but not everything else.
What about that one?
It's more.
This is a semantic argument. I don't know. I guess it's like surreal.
More has a mythological
Oh,
origin. So.
yeah, that too. I don't know.
So,
yeah. You got me beat, man. You're right. Yeah.
okay, so that's interesting. What about the other?
I think it looks pretty real.
It's really good.
Whoever said, thanks, Carl. Yeah, no, it's surrealism, magical realism, pop surrealism, lowbrow realism. There's like so many labels. Huh.
Well, my question is regarding the glass powder.
Yeah.
So when you work on different layers,
Uh-huh.
how do you choose, what to draw on the first, the second, the third, and how many layers do you go to?
Yeah, that's a good question. So normally I only use 2 layers. That piece that I showed you that had the 7 layers, that was kind of the only one I did. That was really early on. I didn't take to that. A lot of my friends that work similar to me do really, kind of deep pieces. Bullseye shows a lot of that work. For me, especially because I like to work large, the pieces got so heavy. And I'm trying to make a rule for myself that if I can't carry it myself, I'm not allowed to make it. I break that rule all the time, but like, they just get so heavy and it's so demanding to make a multi-layered piece. So that's the main reason that I just work in 2 layers. But in terms of that particular piece, or if I was, you know, giving advice to somebody, if you're doing something that's naturalistic or representational, so you're representing a scene, you know, there's some of it straightforward, like a landscape, right? Like parts of the landscape that are closer to the viewer would be on the front layers, parts of the landscape that go back. In terms of that figure, I was kind of thinking that way, you know, like the hand was forward, so I put that hand on the forward layers. But then I would do things to kind of confuse you, where I would switch that up. But I would say in general, you know, if you just want to represent something in the real world, then you would just think about where things are in space and just put them on those layers accordingly. Yeah, yeah.
And you only use powders, or do you use coarser frit?
I don't use any coarse frit. Sometimes I'll use enamel, like glass paint. Really usually just for lines, like line work and things like that. Yeah.
I like the link with digital and real life drawing, because you said you're using Procreate.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know there's like layers in Procreate, and
Yes.
in Word there's also layers, so.
That's very true. And it's great for mocking things up, you know, because on Procreate, you know, not only do you have layers, but you can adjust those layers to be like, you know, this is also on Photoshop, like multiply, you know, so things become transparent. And so then you can really kind of get a feel for what things are going to look like when you're layering glass. I don't do it that much in terms of like turning things to multiply and like practicing like that, but there's definitely an overlap. I mean, you know, and you can get existential about it, but like, everything I do, I can always find ways that it connects and ways that it overlaps and ways that something over here taught me how to do this thing over here. But I would also argue that that's just like life in general, you know? Yeah. Who influenced me? Beth Kavanagh Stitcher is, well, she's not Stitcher anymore, she got divorced. Beth Kavanagh is a ceramic sculptor that does a lot of like predator-prey relationships. So there's a lot of predator-prey relationships in my work. I grew up in the country in the Midwest and just like, I don't know, saw a lot of animals eating other animals. I was fascinated by the fact that it was such a big deal if, you know, someone yelled at somebody or, you know, people had like a domestic fight or something like that. But then you could be like walking down the street and like, you know, a coyote could come up and just like tear a rabbit to shreds, and we were just yeah. Like that was fascinating to me, you know? I was like, what does that mean? And so I made a lot of, like from a very early age, I did a lot of things about predator-prey relationships in terms of like thinking about the inherent violence in animals and thinking about the fact that we're part animal. And so where is the threshold? Where is the line between like us as animal, us as being inherently violent, and then us as transcending that and knowing better? And like, where is that line? So that's what a lot of my work is about.
I see a lot of storytelling in your work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Red Riding Hood.
Yeah, very much so. A lot of like kind of children's book type of thing. I like the kind of juxtaposition of like a really kind of like childish, naive style with a really sort of darker, more complex theme, and putting those things together. Yeah. Anybody else? Yep.
Do you think you had like an event or a residency or created a visit that helped you in your career, like give you a kick or a boost?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like within the glass world.
Because we have the same age, And I'm a little bit jealous because it seems you are above me.
Oh no, Dylan.
It's positive. I know. But yeah, I was wondering if you had, I don't know, yeah,
A breakthrough?
like a trouble or
Yeah.
a class or.
I mean, what I can say is that most of my residencies weren't above the table. Like most of my residencies I made happen. Even if it was at a school that offered residencies, like I didn't do the official residency and they just like gave me some space. Not at like Pilchuck because they're so massive. But, you know, like anything I've done, like at that shop in Carlsbad that I painted, at Monterey, like a lot of the Massachusetts, all of those were just like, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've traveled a lot. I've met a lot of people. And I stay in touch with those people. And that's a really important thing that I even do now with, you know, I do painting and I do murals and stuff. Like if I meet somebody, I get their Instagram. Next couple of days, I'm usually like, hey man, it was great to meet you, whatever. Couple months go by. If anything seems relevant to them, I'll send it to them just so they remember that I exist. Like, you know, like, so that's just something that I'm constantly doing is just reminding people that like I exist and I'm a friend and like, you know, if you come to town, stay with me, like whatever you need to, you know. And then when the time comes, like, there is something that I'm like, oh man, like they work at that shop, that would be perfect. Like I'm already traveling through there. Like I hit them up, like, hey, like let's do a trade. Like most of my residencies, I've also traded something, you know, like I've done work for them. I've built websites for people. I've edited photos. I've done murals. Like you know, so I've just made it work like that. I'm not, you know, but I have friends that have done it a completely other way where they're applying for grants and they're in the contemporary art world and they're showing, you know, like I've never been represented by a gallery, you know, like I've made some money, I'm making more money selling art right now, but for the most part, like I have made very, very little selling art, especially glass, you know, so, but I think in terms of, to answer your question, because I know I'm kind of like veering off, I mean, I lived close to Pilchuck. Whitby Island was pretty close to Pilchuck. And so, and I also worked for Nancy Callan and worked for a lot of people that were very tight with Pilchuck. So I became pretty familiar with those people. And it wasn't opportunities, it was just like we were cool, you know? Like I would see them and like you would chat and it was cool. And then, you know, at the same time, like for me, for instance, it was kind of serendipitous because I work with Bullseye Glass. Michael Endo, who's now the art director at Pilchuck, he was the head of the gallery at Bullseye for many years. So I did I got a merge, like emerging artist thing at Bullseye when I was very young. Met Michael Endo, like, hey, you're cool. Oh, you went to school for painting. Me too. Yeah, none of us do it. We're like the only ones. Yeah, woo. And then like time goes on, like, hey man, like you need a TA, like blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I do. Like, okay, I TA for him now. Like, oh shit, like now you're director of Pilchuck. Cool. And like this stuff just like, does that answer your question?
It sounds like it's meeting people.
Yeah, meeting, just asking is not gonna offend anybody. Like asking for a job, asking for an opportunity, telling someone like, hey, like I could do this for you. Like Nancy Callan is a glass blower. I don't blow glass. Like it was just like, hey, like I noticed when you were giving your PowerPoint that like these images were kind of off and I could fix those for you. Do you mind? I was like at Corning. She's like, yeah, no, I don't mind. And I went and I fixed them and she's like, wow, you did a really good job. I'm like, yeah, I do that a lot. I can do this for you too. Can I see, like maybe we can look at your website sometime? Like, yeah, that would be great. And next thing you know, like I'm like doing studio stuff, but like just, yeah, like if that's where you're at, it's just like anything that you could do, like don't wait for someone to ask, you know, like make it up. Like art, like the things that I make, like yes, I make pieces and I make sculptures, but like it sounds so effing corny, but like I make opportunities for myself. Like you can sculpt that. Like you can make that, you know, like no one else is gonna, anyway, I digress. Yeah, just be creative with,
Yeah, no, sure.
don't go online and look at like job applications. Come up with your own thing and put it out there. And people might say no, but even the people that say no, they might email you in a couple of years, be like, hey, like actually that idea you had, like I kind of want to do that now. That's happened to me many times. You know. So, sorry, I get intense. Do we have time for the little thingy? Okay. Any other questions? You probably don't want me to do what I just did to Dylan, to you, so you're probably not going to ask me anything. I just wanted to go through the process of this piece. So this is what I made at the residency, the Emerging Artists residency at Pilchuck last year. So it was a 6-week residency. I made a few other things, small things, but this was kind of what I made. To start, I do a pencil drawing. So the piece on the left was my original pencil drawing. To be honest, I kind of wish I just left it like that. What I do when I'm nervous is I tend to overdo things, you know. I add a lot of stuff because nothing's good enough, so I just keep adding and adding and adding. You know, a big thing for me in my growth and maturity as an artist is learning to stop adding things. And like, even if it doesn't feel like it's enough, like that's okay. You know, I think a really big thing that I deal with is every piece I make, I think like that piece is going to define my career. And that piece is the only thing that anybody is going to see. And it is like, but it's not. Like that's not what art is. Art is like writing a series of novels, you know? And so like every piece is just a next step to the next one. And if you spend forever futzing and overworking a piece, you're just preventing yourself from moving forward and getting better. So anyway, I do kind of, in retrospect, I like this a little better than that. But what I do is I tend to take my pencil drawing, I scan it in, and then I put it on Procreate. It's now Procreate. Before iPads, it was, you know, Photoshop. I scan it in, and then I colorize it. And then I have a pretty close replica to what I'm going to do in the glass already there to reference. So for this piece, this one is called... No, there's a title. I just can't think of it right now. This one is called Collective Memory. Thank God I remembered that. Instead of, I do work with enamel, usually for line work. Sometimes I do it by hand. That's what we're doing in class this week. But I also can screen print it. And so that's what I did. That's Jeffrey Bowton, if anybody knows that guy, helping me out with that. So I screen printed the line work. And then this is sifting the initial layer of shadows. So I simplified the shadows to a warm shadow and a cool shadow. So I mix a little bit of red with black and a little bit of blue with black. And then I say, okay, that's my warm side, that's my cool side. And that is a very, very tiny sifter that I made by melting mesh onto a mechanical pencil cap. And that is what I do most of my work with, that mechanical pencil tool. And here I'm going on top and adding some skin tones. You can see I just laid down this piece of acrylic. Pilchuck got a laser cutter, yeah. So now I can laser cut clear acrylic stencils when I'm there, which is very handy. It just saves me time because without the stencil, I would be sifting and then all of that powder that gets along the edges, I have to clear off myself, as my students know, because they've been doing that all week. And then on the right is, you know, just in progress after it's been fired. So you can see huge difference between before and after you fire the powder. This piece was pretty big. I can't remember exactly how big it is. I think it's, I don't know, like 24 by 36 or something around there. But what I did is I found a little fold-out table, and I put it in the studio, and because you kind of have to hover over it because you have to look down at a fairly straight 90-degree angle when you're working. It's really hard on your back. I have a lot of different methods that I use and to help with my back, but it still kills. And then I have a bridge, so I make these little things of wood that just hover over the glass so I can kind of rest my wrists on them and sift.
Is this only one layer or?
Oh no, this is me working on the background. So I've pretty much finished the skin, the figures, and I think at this point I've actually flipped to the other side of the glass, and I'm sifting the green on the leaves, and I don't know, I told my students this, why I would design this is so strange. But I don't have a stencil for this, so that means that I'm doing all these little leaves, and then I have to manually carve away every single little gap. And I could have designed it, I could have done any other design. It didn't have to be this. No one, you would think I would have had a gun to my head to do this. Anyway, yeah, so people ask me a lot, is the powder fixed with anything? No. And I was telling my students this, it took me it took me probably 3 days to do that glass fern thing. Most of it was just removing the little negative spaces. And then I'm walking it up to the kiln, and I get really casual, which as you can tell, I do that, but I shouldn't, because I was walking through the door and I just banged it. I banged the glass on the side of the door, and it all just perfectly shifted. So then I had to wipe it all away and start over. Oh, I also said I found the photo.
Oh.
So another great idea that I had when I was at Pilchuck was that I would cut this out with my Taurus ring saw, but this piece is way too big to cut out with the Taurus. I was like, it's fine, I'll just make it bigger. So I just went to the wood shop and built this giant bed. A lot of problems with this idea. Vibration being a big one, but also this ring saw, I cut 2 layers of fused bullseye on it a lot, but that's more than what it's really meant for. It's meant for thin stained glass. And I had been getting away with it okay when I was making the masks, but I'm back here trying to push this big, really thick sheet of glass through that. I can't feel anything. I have no idea how much strain is on the blade because I'm way back here. So, yeah, it didn't work, okay? I cracked it. It was really stupid. It's really dumb. But, so this was my cut. I don't know, I don't really know. Maybe it had even cracked before I finished, I don't know. I cut it here because I was going to make it this shape, So I was going around like that, and then I was gonna exit because I was gonna take this chunk off. So as I was on my exit, the blade broke, and I was like, oh, okay, no worries, I'll just change the blade. But then I saw that it had cracked, and I was like, oh my God. But it repaired. I put it back in that kiln, and I dammed it all up. And there is a little bit of a scar from the saw mark, but there's no scar from that crack. Really, really slow schedule, crazy slow schedule. It took 3 days. Yeah, man. But it's back. So I still need to cut it to that shape. If anyone wants to do that for me for a low amount of money, let me know. I'm looking. I'm also really interested in the way that my work, oh, here you can see the scar. That's it there. So I'm interested in the way my work interacts with natural light. I'm trying to figure out what the next step is for glass, because I do a lot of things with other materials. And so it's okay, why am I working with glass? one, it's weatherproof, and B, it does really beautiful things with natural light. So I hope in the future that I can do things, if not outside, maybe in a window, but in a way that's very different than what we know with traditional stained glass. So that's kind of my interest. I think it's going to be a really slow build, because like I said, I think I'm going to keep limiting my glass to, a few times a year doing residencies and things like that. But yeah, that's where my head is at, and that's where I'm heading. If you haven't already, please follow me on Instagram. That is the best way to keep up with my current shenanigans. And I'm happy to take more questions about that process, but I know we're 8 minutes over time, so.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.